Hi, I'm Wendy, and this is my wisdom for this week. So I know it's been a few weeks, but I've been a little bit busy, and being busy is a good thing most of the time. So that brings me to raising children. Oh my goodness. So I have two daughters. I know a lot of you have children. I will just speak about my experiences. We thought that we had the same baby twice because when we had them, they looked exactly alike. In fact, when we look at pictures now, if we didn't write whether or not it was Sydney or Morgan, then it's kind of a toss-up. And if we can't see those signature marks that distinguish them, yeah, it's the same baby twice. However, as they grew, of course, they're not the same baby, and they were not the same little girls, and they're certainly not the same young women today. And raising children, there really is no guidebook other than the Bible or family members, moms, aunts, grandmothers, that we ask and solicit advice. What do I do when? What do I do if? And raising children in a joint environment has its challenges. It is seemingly easier, but it's interesting because when you have a partner in child rearing, that other person has their opinions and their thoughts and their ways that they've learned. So it's the combining of the two that makes it a little bit challenging. And so what Mike and I have always done is made sure that we were in agreement, that we were on the same accord before we approached the children. Does that mean that we always agree? No. I would have my ideas about how we should handle something, and he certainly had his. Again, let's talk about mine. So when they're young, it's difficult. You want to make sure that you're nurturing them, that you're inspiring them, and that you're encouraging them. I recognize that as they grew, and as I became a little bit more busy and more involved at work and raising children, and being a good wife, that a lot of my exchanges became, don't do this, don't do that, why didn't you do? And I would have to repeat myself over and over and over again. And it really just wore me out. It was like, wow, I mean, I know they heard me. I know they're smart. I'm not understanding why they can't just do what I've asked them to do. And that continued, of course, for a lot of their life. And when I stopped and I paused and I recognized that there were more no's than there were yeses, that there were more why didn't you than there were you did great. I've really had to be intentional about making a shift, because I did recognize, and my husband had reminded me many times, that everything that I pour into them sticks. Even if they don't acknowledge it, even if they don't say it, even if at the time they don't adhere to it, everything that's being poured in stays. And so when you recognize that, you have a decision to make. What if, say, if you were making a stew, because I don't bake, but if you were making a stew and you were putting in all the ingredients, once you put them in there, they stay. They're in there and they add to whatever it is that you're creating. And then it becomes the blend of all of the ingredients that gives you the result of what you've done. But that's only part of it. And so maybe that's a good metaphor, maybe it's not, but it does make you stop and think, do I want to put an onion in there? Because certainly sometimes I like the taste that the onion may give, but then there's an onion in there. Or do I want carrots in there? So, okay, you get my point. And so my point is this: We have to choose our words carefully. We have to monitor our moods. We have to understand and take responsibility for everything that we're pouring in or putting into the pot, because it sticks and it stays, and it somehow then changes the flavor and changes the outcome of what we ultimately make. But again, that's only part of it. So you have what you put in, you have what everyone else puts in, and those are all external things that serve to create these wonderful, dynamic human beings that will then go out, grow, and do things on their own. But it's who they were made to be, who God purposed them to be, who God made them to be, that really has to ultimately be fulfilled. So I'm at a point right now where I'm seeing my children grow and develop, and some of it is like, wow, that is amazing. That is exactly what we taught them. That is exactly what we had hoped for them, but not all of it. And some of it is, wow, I didn't know that that was something that they had in them. This has to be a God-given talent, and I'm so thankful. I'm thankful when I can recognize the things about them that are different. I can embrace it. I can enjoy it, and I can receive it. Even if it didn't come from me and it didn't come from my husband, I know that it's just who they are. We made our contributions and we get fed our contributions right back. You know how your mom or grandma used to say, just wait until you have kids? That is so true, because everything that you did that was poured into you, you maybe have poured into them one way or another, and it will come right back quick. And so it's an interesting cycle and circle of occurrences and events. But it's interesting because we know it's in there, but we just sometimes hope that somehow that thing doesn't manifest. So back to my current situation and what I need your help with. So as they grow and change. So I'm a pediatric nurse, or I used to be, and I recall that a conversation that I had more than 20 years ago where one of the women said to us, we were having a conversation in the middle of the night about children and raising children. And she said, you don't allow them to make their own decisions until they're out of your house. And at the time I didn't have children. And I said, wow, I don't think that that's a good way to approach it. And she said, well, I mean, consider everybody that you know that's successful. And at the time, she used sports references. So she said Michael Jordan, for example. With Michael Jordan, what she proposed was that his parents sacrificed above and beyond. They made a decision early in his life what he would do and how it would occur. And then they did everything in their power to stay in line with, support, and encourage that decision. And so they were at every game. They made him practice outside of practice. They dedicated their entire lives to pouring in to see the manifestation of the vision that they had. Whether or not that was a God-given vision, I don't know. Whether or not it was his dad's vision, who can say, or his mom's vision. But what we can say is we know that he turned out to be one of the greatest basketball players and athletes of all time. So then you have a question. Does it take all that? And is that the way that you want to do it? And so it sparked some thought in me even before I ever had children. And somehow I just always felt like, while that is a means to an end, and it certainly is a formula for success, somehow there's some other elements that maybe aren't being nurtured, or that maybe aren't manifesting in their lives. And so I never really grasped or adapted that. And I'll say that culturally there are some differences. And so I was born in this country. I have lived in this country my whole life, minus a couple of years in different places. But my culture is based on doing things that we know have sustained us for years, embracing what we've seen and what we've learned and researched to be good and have good outcomes, and then to just throw in a tremendous amount of love. But with that tremendous amount of love comes a tremendous amount of discipline. And so it is about the delicate balance of encouragement and correction. And then you have to somehow figure that out for each one of the children that you have, because each one has a different need. They have to have a different measure of correction and encouragement. But certainly the Bible says that correction is necessary. So, do we correct every action, or do we only put in our efforts to correct major actions and major decisions? Well, it starts when they're toddlers, and I'll say that it is so important to establish the boundaries and limitations early in their lives. No, they can't speak to you any kind of way. No, just because you model a behavior does not mean that it's cute when they demonstrate it or demonstrate it or model it back, and you know exactly what I mean. We may say that things are cute when they're little, but remember that we are constructing this thing in a way that sometimes we're not aware until it comes back. So with my children, having to really mediate and monitor and adjust to their different needs as they grow has been a challenge. Being in a place where I can accept the outcome, whatever it is, and understanding that it's not only what I've poured in and what Mike has poured in, but what God has ordained and what the world has poured in. Some of it I can take some credit for, but essentially anything that they do does not bring credit to me. It brings credit to them. It glorifies God. So on the flip side of that, anything that they do that is not a positive outcome is the same. It's not just a result of what I said, what I did, or how I've chosen to raise them or Mike. Their decisions are the mixture of everything that has gone into them. Everything that occurs because it is the plan for their life. Am I always happy with it? No. Is it difficult to confront? Yes. Is it hard to embrace? Yes. Because I don't always agree. And I don't always get it. And certainly now as the gap increases, I get it even less. But it's not about me. And that's really my wisdom. I mean, I know I'm going on, but my wisdom for this week is we tend to make everything about us. Whatever our children do, somehow we believe and we, in our minds, see the connection between what they've done and what we've done, who they are and what we've put in and hoped they would be. And so little of who they are and who they become and what decisions they make and their successes and failures, so little of that has anything to do with us. Our job is to love them through it all. It's not the only job, but I'm starting to believe that it is the most important one. Regardless of their decisions, love them. Regardless of their successes, love them. And regardless of their failures, they need more love even then. Who they choose to live their lives with is their choice, not ours. Even if we know that the choices are not the best, it is not for us to determine their choices, to influence their choices, or to make their decisions. So I said I needed your help because having difficult conversations in business is one thing. Having difficult conversations at home is a completely different thing. It impacts and affects everything that you do 24 hours a day. So the difficult decision is, like the advice that I got 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, is it that we should guide, protect, and make the decisions for our children until they are over the age of 21? Or should we guide, direct, and allow them to make their own, even though we know that they lack the maturity, the depth of knowledge, and maybe even the gravity of the situation that they're faced with? I've chosen, up to this point, to gently guide their decisions. I embraced watching them make decisions on their own and then holding them to the outcomes of those decisions. When it's been something small, like what time you go to bed or how much time you spend on your phone, it's, the outcome is not that grave. But when it's something huge, like what college you'll choose to go to, will you go to college, what will you major in, and will you get a job? Well, that has lifelong implications. So I'm curious to know your thoughts on how you approach that and what your outcomes have been. It's a challenge, and I don't believe that it's just a challenge for me. So that's my wisdom for this week. There's a lot wrapped in there, but essentially it comes down to, are we the ones who influence decisions for our children, or are we the decision makers for our children until they reach an age, 18, 21, 45, that we believe that they're ready to make solid decisions on their own? So that's all I have for this week. I know this is probably about 20 minutes, so if you have time to get through this, thank you. I appreciate you. And if you have to come back to it, that's good too. If you get an opportunity, you can just hit #replay when you respond. But I always enjoy having this time to share with you and for you to share with me. And until next week or the next 2 weeks, we have an event coming up that's a marriage event the weekend of the 13th. So next week is going to be a bit busy. So it may be the next week that we connect. But if you're in the area, you are certainly welcome to register and join us for the Better Together marriage retreat here in Evans, Georgia. And if not this year, maybe next year. Our job and our purpose is to pour in to make this world and our community better than it was. So until next week, have a blessed week, or until 2 weeks, have blessed weeks, and I'll talk to you soon.